Tonight, we begin with a development that U.S. officials, global financial elites, and market analysts had predicted, minimized, and quietly prepared for. A development that unfolded not over decades of dramatic collapse, but in a single monetary cycle. A single cycle that changed how central banks think about the dollar. A single cycle that forced governments to quietly hedge against U.S. financial power. And a single cycle that revealed how fragile dollar dominance has quietly become. What the United States, as the issuer of the world's reserve currency, did in recent years crossed a line that global financial authorities had hoped would never be tested so openly. And when that line cracked, the rest of the world did not hesitate. They responded with diversification, de-risking, and long-term exit planning. For nearly 2 decades now, there had been signals, not official warnings, not formal confessions, just structural indicators that the United States was preparing something monetarily unsustainable. America has been dominant, yes, but it has also been complacent in that dominance. Its monetary behavior followed a familiar pattern, a cycle, almost a ritual. Crisis emerges. Liquidity expands. Debt accumulates. Confidence is assumed. But what set off alarm bells in global central banks, sovereign wealth funds, and finance ministries this time was that the ritual stopped pretending to be temporary. Experts who monitor reserve flows, sovereign debt dynamics, and monetary credibility know the indicators. Persistent monetization of U.S. debt. Emergency liquidity programs becoming permanent fixtures. Interest payments consuming rising portions of U.S. fiscal capacity, and the normalization of deficit-financed stability, all of that stopped being debated publicly. And whenever financial elites stop discussing risk, it usually means the risk has become structural. Early this year, international financial monitoring institutions detected what they described as a structural break in global reserve behavior, including accelerated diversification away from dollar-denominated assets not seen at this scale in over half a century. These are the kinds of shifts that only occur when the system is signaling something very specific: a loss of confidence, a reassessment of political risk, or anticipation of long-term instability. Observers didn't know which category this fell into, or whether it fell into all three at once. But what they did know was this: the United States was changing its monetary posture, and the world was reacting accordingly. And when the anchor currency of the global system begins to wobble, even quietly, everyone notices. The response from global financial actors was not loud. It was not panicked. It was not dramatic. It was urgent and discreet. Officials speaking after IMF consultations, BIS meetings, and G20 finance sessions described the US monetary posture as unsustainable, politically constrained, and most importantly, credibility eroding because it relies on faith rather than discipline. Dollar hegemony works only as long as others accept the bargain. This time, many stopped accepting it. Within months of continued US monetary expansion, central banks sharply increased gold purchases. Bilateral trade increasingly bypassed dollar settlement. Currency swap lines expanded outside U.S. oversight. Alternative payment systems moved from theory to implementation. These were not symbolic gestures. They were structural hedges, moves only made when trust is being reassessed at the highest level. Tonight, global financial data confirms that this shift was deliberate. Countries did not abandon the dollar overnight. They did not trigger collapse. They built exits. They reduced marginal exposure. They diversified settlement infrastructure. They weakened dependency slowly but intentionally. They hit reserve composition. They hit trade invoicing dominance. They hit financial plumbing that sustains U.S. power. In other words, they targeted the invisible architecture of dollar hegemony. This is what made economists' warnings so urgent. The U.S. move wasn't symbolic, it was actionable. It represented behavior that accelerates de-dollarization by design, not rebellion. And the global response was not emotional. It was calculated. They didn't dump treasuries. They didn't crash markets. They created alternatives. Here is where the story becomes even more systemic. According to critics like Yanis Varoufakis, the issue is not inflation, deficits, or even debt. The issue is monetary imperial complacency. Varoufakis has long argued that the US operates a system where deficits are exported, crises are globalized, adjustment costs are pushed outward. The printing press is not just an economic tool, it is a geopolitical weapon. But weapons only function while others fear them. This time, the world did not resist it redesigned. That response was so measured, so technically sophisticated, that it sent the strongest signal of all. Confidence is no longer automatic. That matters because reserve currency status is not permanent. It is conditional. It is psychological. And once questioned, it never fully recovers. As reports continued coming in throughout the year, the scope became undeniable. BRICS economies expanded local currency settlement frameworks. Asian central banks accumulated gold at historic rates. Energy exporters diversified pricing beyond the dollar. This wasn't collapse. This wasn't chaos. This was systemic hedging. This was monetary multipolarity. And multipolarity is the one thing dollar hegemony struggles to control. Remember, U.S. policymakers believed the dollar was irreplaceable. Alternatives were impractical. Confidence would always rebound. But tonight, the opposite is happening. Alternatives are being tolerated. Inefficiency is being accepted. And confidence is being rationed. What makes this moment so dangerous and so revealing is that U.S. monetary decisions are happening under intense pressure. Voters want stability. Markets want liquidity. Politicians want growth. Creditors want discipline. The Federal Reserve is balancing all of this while servicing record debt and facing political scrutiny. When leaders in that position expand money supply aggressively, they're not acting from strength. They're acting from constraint. Official U.S. statements describe current policy as temporary, targeted, and necessary. That is central bank language for, we ran out of painless options. You don't hear that tone unless credibility is under strain. Meanwhile, voices like Yanis Varoufakis continue to warn global audiences. He argues that monetary dominance without political reform is unsustainable. He warns that once trust erodes, it never returns symmetrically. These are not sound bites. They are system-level diagnoses. Here's what makes the situation even more concerning. Alongside U.S. monetary expansion, China accelerated digital currency infrastructure. Regional blocs built independent clearing systems. Strategic rivals coordinated financial autonomy, all within the same window. When multiple actors prepare exits simultaneously, the system is being quietly rewritten. Analysts now see three futures. One, the dollar adapts and remains dominant. Another, it shares power in a multipolar system. The third, it loses credibility faster than expected. Today, the world is preparing for option 2 and hedging against 3. This is now a test of credibility. The U.S. wants patience. The world wants insurance. Markets want clarity. History wants restraint. Sources say diversification is accelerating. They say trust is thinning. They say the dollar still dominates, but no longer commands unquestioned obedience. That alone changes everything. As the coming months unfold, more data will confirm what is already visible. The printing press bought time. It prevented collapse. But it extracted a cost. What happens next depends on whether credibility is rebuilt or spent. And tonight, for the first time in generations, dollar hegemony feels conditional. Markets are calm, too calm. And when markets stay calm after massive monetary expansion, recalculation is underway. Because tonight, the world learned something fundamental. Money is power. Trust is currency. And no hegemony lasts forever. This story is far from over. But tonight, one thing is clear. The dollar still leads. But it no longer rules alone. And the quiet shift has already begun. And we will be here watching every detail as the next phase unfolds.